Today we're going to talk to you about feather sticking, or something that's a very effective technique for lighting a fire when you haven't actually got any dry wood around. One thing you can guarantee when you're out and about, even if it's been chucking it down with rain, that there will be dry wood around. It might be wet on the outside, but it will be dry on the inside, and feather sticking is a great way to find that dry tinder to get your fire lit. Now, the thing that's most important about feather sticking is finding a nice piece of wood that has a long grain to it. A hardwood isn't so good. Something like oak or hawthorn, something like that, isn't so great. But things like pine, hazel, this piece is hazel, are ideal for feather sticking. You want a piece really about the length of your arm. That gives you a rough gauge, because what we're going to do when we make it is we're going to secure it in position on the ground with our chest. That gives you two hands to work, and it keeps everything very solid. So what we're essentially going to do is we've quartered this piece of wood down, so we've cut it in half and cut it in half again, and what that does, that gives us some nice angles, and that's the best way to start feather sticking, is to work from an angle. So I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to start to run it down the sharpest angle. As you can see, the piece of wood starts to curl off. Now as I make a cut after cut after cut, I turn the blade ever so slightly, so I run it down the next new angle that I've created. Now if bits come off, it doesn't matter, and we can use them in our fire as well, but what we're trying to do is create very fine slithers of wood that will catch a spark once we start to ignite them. Now as you can see, the bits and pieces are slowly, I'm catching it and bits are falling off, but there's enough there to start to create the surface area that we want. Now I'm using quite long strokes at the moment, because this is essentially going to be the main part of our feather stick. This is the bit that's going to generate enough heat to get our fire going. But what I'm going to do is, as I work my way up the stick, I'm going to start to make those curls smaller and smaller and thinner. And what essentially, ultimately then, we end up with is a very, very fine curls of wood that we can, if we're very careful, light with a spark. So as you can see, the curls are starting to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, this can be done with any sharp knife, any sharp axe. We've done it with axes, knives, everything else, but a Scandinavian grind knife like the Mora that I'm using here is ideal for this, because you've got quite a lot of control. Now that I've got the main part of the feathers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in closer and I'm going to start working ever so gently, and I'm going to start trying to make some really fine feathers that will hopefully catch a spark. And here I'm literally trying to make these as thin as I possibly can. Now this bit is quite fiddly, but you have to make these really, really fine in order for them to catch fire. Alright, let's see if we can get this to ignite. There you go. That's how you make your feather stick.